Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Distracted Driving Podcast. It is episode 50. A well-rounded student is more valuable. This is part 2 of my conversation with my very long-time friend, Corey Rasmussen. In the previous episode, if you didn't catch it, Corey and I discussed our paths to becoming engineers, and then our subsequent paths out of corporate life and into starting our own businesses. That led us into discussing a topic that has become a recurring theme on the show, education, and particularly higher education. So that's where we are going to pick up the conversation today. I chose the title of this episode because it's not only something Corey says in the course of our conversation, but it really connects the first half of this episode to the last half. Our education conversation leads into some references to our own GPAs and what that number does or does not mean. But then we segue into a bit of an infomercial for Lead Out Loud workshops. I apologize if it's a little too infomercial-y. But it comes up because Lead Out Loud, as you hopefully know, is the new company I created to help engineers and other technical people be confident, effective leaders. Engineers that can also lead are more well-rounded, and it was Corey's goal to be more well-rounded when he enrolled in a Lead Out Loud workshop. So we'll end this episode talking a bit about his experience in the workshop and the importance of knowing your limits. It's all part of why a well-rounded student is more valuable, and it's coming up right now. You talked about so the education doesn't bestow character. I would argue that, first of all, the benefit of education, and I'll speak for myself. When I was in college the first time, I learned how to learn. I feel like I didn't do that when I was in grade school. I went through grade school when you and I were in school, and even through high school, I was there to get the A. And I got pretty good at knowing how to get the A. But as I look back, what was I learning? Was I actively learning new information? Yeah, I was. But it was different than when I got to college and I experienced some failures and I had to adapt and adjust and figure out, okay, wait a minute, how is this game played?
Right. And it is a different game.
And then it shifted, right? It shifted and I was able to figure out, okay, I'm learning how to learn. And I think that was the value there. And going back now to what you said about character, for me, my expectation was, okay, do a good job and maybe not climb the corporate ladder, but be rewarded for doing the good job. And that was not the case. Certainly not universally, maybe occasionally. It was people that were just trying to climb the corporate ladder and they didn't care. I did not see character rewarded.
True.
Often. And so maybe is that where things changed? I mean, you mentioned the internet has come in. People can go to YouTube University now. So,
Right.
So is that where the change came in?
I think so. I think that just opened a lot of doors that, people probably intentionally closed. Big universities don't want to let, their curriculums out, so that they keep people coming to their university and paying money. And, you and I can go take the class and then make a YouTube video about it. And it's the same. I mean, it doesn't get you a degree at the end, but...
Right.
And I hear a lot now, especially from young people, they're like, yeah, my teacher will be talking about something, and then I'll just go to look it up on YouTube, and then somebody's there explaining it better than they ever could. Teacher, that is.
Well, and we had this conversation with a prior guest. It brings you back now to then, well, so what are the universities selling? What is the value proposition there in 2023 with the internet, with YouTube, with all of this knowledge, access to knowledge? What is the value proposition for going to a four-year university?
Right.
Particularly if you're going and studying something that is not in a regulated industry.
Sure. And I think that's a question that universities have lost sight of, because they should have a purpose of what is the education for? Because that they're selling a product. Now, granted, there's government rules and stuff that makes it easier for them to sell their product than a lot of other things. But I think they've lost sight of that. I really do. If you think about it from a practical standpoint, what is an employer looking for? They're looking for the, I guess, weeding out of bad clients or bad prospective employees, right? So if I have an engineering degree, it means I put up with enough math and physics and chemistry and whatever else,
Yeah.
and really determined that I wanted to be an engineer. And if you say that all of a sudden, you know, every fifth or 4 to 5 employees just aren't cutting it, you know, where do I find a better where do I find a better engineer?
Well, I think I think what it's comes down to is it's rigor. The degree is an indicator for some reason that is the indicator that we've chosen to use as a show of rigor. Hey, here's a person who can go and if I'm being cynical about it, can go and jump through hoops and take orders and do what they're told.
Right.
If I'm being less cynical about it, okay, well, here's a person who was able to make it through these tough courses, and all right, they're going to be more robust than somebody else. I know people who went to law school that now practice law that tell me, yeah, my day to day job, I didn't learn anything about how to do my day to day job in law school.
Right.
Everything I'm doing now, I learned, from the partners I'm working with, or from the district attorney's office, or wherever it is. And I think that's, I mean, I don't know, what was your experience in your degrees in mechanical engineering?
Correct.
So that I would expect that that's a little bit different, but maybe not.
So yeah, the vast majority of what I took in college really didn't translate over directly, or I had the fundamentals, but like there was that was 5% of what I needed to build on, and that just took a lot of time and effort, and had to build that. I'll tell you one of the big secrets for me getting through college, because I'm very smart when I can apply it. If we're just learning theory or whatever, I'm not good at that. And I would always ask, and almost to like they would piss me or I piss them off, is I'd be like, hey, when will I ever use this? Like, what's an application where I can physically use this? And a lot of things were obvious, but when you get into more of the theoretical stuff, it's not as obvious. And one of the classes I had to take was partial differential equations, which was the worst class I think I took in college. It's an advanced math class. And one day,
And hold on, wait. When you say worst, as in that was the worst grade you got, or that was just the worst time you had, or you worked the hardest? What does worst mean in this case?
it was probably the hardest class I had. I really didn't understand most of it. I got a 58 on the midterm, and that was 50% of the grade. So you can
Okay,
see where this is
gotcha.
going.
So it's not a good time.
It was not a great time. Anyway, so halfway through the course, he starts talking about something called Hilbert space. And I do, the same thing I always do. Hey, I raise my hand, and he calls on me, and I said, hey, when would I ever use this? And he stops the entire lecture, and he goes,
Uh-oh.
this may be the best question anybody has ever asked me. I'm like, oh, crap. And he looks at me, and he goes, we have no uses for this. And
I
I'm
was
sitting there
honest.
going, oh, my gosh, what the heck? And he tells me that when we do have an application, we'll have the math already to explain how it works. And he was so excited about that. I'm like, I guess that's cool, but it's just weird that that it would come to that where we have math, we have the ability to explain our universe without an application yet.
I feel like this is that's something that Sheldon and the gang from The Big Bang Theory would get excited about. The theoretical physicists that there's no application, but boy, look at how much we understand.
Right.
We think. And so you said something a minute ago too, where you kind of indicated like, what are the companies buying? The universities are creating a product. It's theoretically it's an educated student,
Right.
and so what are the universities buying? And that's the question we ask all the time on the industry advisory board that I'm a member of, where we're trying to advise the department on, hey, here's what you need to be adding to the curriculum. Here's what the students need to be doing in order to make sure that they are marketable to companies. That's supposed to be the whole purpose.
Absolutely.
And one of my favorite jobs that I did have when I was working in large corporations was working with interns, because that was when, to bring this full circle back to what you said with the mentored engineer, that was an opportunity for me to both impart some wisdom about maybe some of the mistakes I made to young and up and coming engineers, but also to make sure that they were gaining practical experience that was going to make them more valuable to whatever organization that they went into, as opposed to just knowing that they've got the math all sorted out for this hypothetical question that might come up one day.
Right. Yeah, I always had a joke where I wouldn't hire anybody with more than a 3.5 GPA because they were too educated to do anything.
And there again, I've got friends and colleagues that GPA was everything. They wouldn't hire somebody with lower than a 3.5. And I always said the same thing. I'm like, I don't even care what the GPA is.
Right.
Kind of for the same
Two guys
reason
with
you're
lower
talking
than 3.5 GPAs, right?
Well, you know what? I will say this. It's no secret that I damn near had to leave the California State University because I was contractually obligated to do so if I didn't get my grades up. So I did not do well in my original course of study. But after I changed my major to something that resonated more with me, my major GPA, actually it might not have been 3.5. I take that back. I think it was close. It was close. My overall GPA was not. I had 4 years of very poor grades that just dragged that thing down. But I think the overarching point is that a well-rounded student is more valuable than somebody who all they know how to do is go and be a student, which is why when I was hiring people, I'd see somebody with a PhD, and I'm like, they're not going to be a good fit for us.
I hear you there.
All right. Well, so you said you didn't want to go into a corporate leadership position, but I know that you are trying to improve some of your leadership skills and abilities, because I've seen you lurking about
Are
a
you going to talk
workshop
about the
series.
lead out loud thing that some guy
Why
I
don't,
know, Sean Genevieve's Enterprises? You ever heard of that guy?
what a great segue. Yes, I have heard of that
I
guy.
know. I mean, he's putting on this course. It's 3 weeks, 1 hour each week, and man, you get together with a bunch of other people, and you get to make fun of Sean. You could say you're dead to him. He's dead to you. And
Hold on, Corey. We have to pause there for a word from our sponsors. This podcast is brought to you in part by Lead Out Loud, workshops that combine improv comedy with agile and leadership principles to allow you to engage in messy learning, which is really the ability to practice without consequences. Lead Out Loud workshops. Learn more at lolworkshop.com.
highly recommended.
Seriously though, so how give it to me straight. How's it been going? Is it what you expected?
It is great. So I really didn't have many expectations. Kind of I wanted to support you in this endeavor,
Good.
Sean. Plus, I should learn how to lead or something. But yeah, I've started hiring some people to help me with my business. I've got a virtual assistant. I got a webmaster now, and I really wanted to make sure that I'm showing them like not only my way to do it, but showing them how to do it in a very clear way. One of the things that I use humor. I don't know if you noticed that, Sean. And
Yes, it's very dry sometimes.
sometimes. But apparently, humor and like telling people what to do, it's a really risky proposition, and you probably aren't going to get the results you want. So I've had to tone that back and not use the humor while giving instructions and leading people, because it really does send mixed messages.
Well, I think it does matter the mode of communication too. When you're in person and you have we talked about body language. That was one of the modules that we went through. The body language is different. It comes across differently when you're in person versus on the phone or on a
Right.
video meeting. And we should clarify for people too. By the way, you keep saying you have a virtual assistant. But most people, I'm telling you,
Nope,
are
you're
going to have
wrong.
a virtual assistant with an AI bot.
No, this is a real physical being, human.
You have a remote assistant.
Yeah, virtual.
She works virtually. No, wait, that could be misinterpreted too.
It's a virtual assistant. Look it up.
Well, I can tell you that I think you're going to enjoy and hopefully gain value out of the third and final lesson on Tuesday, because we're going to talk about leading with intent, and it just fits right into what you said. You want to not just tell them your way of doing something, but help people understand what needs to get done.
Right. Especially since what I've asked them to do isn't something I'm an expert in.
In fact, it's more important in those cases to recognize
Right.
the edges of your own sphere of knowledge.
Spheres don't have edges.
Exactly. Well, that's episode 50. Thank you so much for listening or watching. Please, if you don't mind, I would love it if you could rate the show on your podcasting platform of choice. Head over to distracteddrivingpodcast.com and leave a comment on the episode. If you have some feedback, you can also reach me on LinkedIn. You can find Corey there as well. Episode 51 is going to be next, obviously, because I may not know how spheres work, but I do know how counting works. And this will be an opportunity that Corey takes to steal my podcast from me and turn me into the guest. So guest host next week will be Corey, and the guest will be Sean. So if you wanted to know more about me or what I do, episode 51 is your chance to find out. We'll see you there.